Hi, and welcome. Please leave a comment and introduce yourself. I'm so glad you'll be joining me today in this Transform Your Communication Style Live in the IGA Club Instagram Growth Strategies for Businesses. If you're watching the replay, thank you for joining us as well. My name is Zoe, and I've been working with women as a psychologist for well over 10 years around issues of confidence, assertiveness, and empowerment. I've also been a small business owner for over 5 years. I've personally had to learn new ways of communicating with clients, staff, colleagues, family, and friends, you name it. I've been too passive, too aggressive, and just right. I've learned over time that the best way to communicate with others involves knowing them as well as yourself, and always keeping communication clear and simple. That's how you get the best results. With just your words, you can communicate that you have a boundary, need, or limit that is well within reason and more than deserved. However, if you don't speak up, no one will ever know. My goal in this class was born from many years of encouraging and leading women to value their needs over their fears of confrontation. Before I start with some details about how to change your communication, I want to talk specifically about assertive communication, which is the goal here. It's often confused with being aggressive, but it's not. Assertive communication is a style of speaking where a person stands up for their needs, wants, and limits, while also not overlooking the needs of others around them. It's neither passive nor aggressive, but clear, specific, and strong. Assertive communication is respectful to both you and the person you're speaking with. It's not you speaking over them. It's a collaborative experience. Today we're going to work on improving your leadership communication skills through understanding different types of communication, setting reasonable goals for yourself, and overcoming mental barriers to speaking up. To start, there are 3 main types of communication. There's passive, assertive, and aggressive. Passive communicators not only fail to assert themselves in most situations, but they also tend to feel taken advantage of. They feel stuck in roles that reinforce a sense of victimhood, and they lack a sense of agency to make changes in their lives. Aggressive communication, as compared with assertive, is closer to bullying, whereby someone will express their needs in a way that doesn't leave room for compromise, collaboration, or anyone else's needs or opinions. Aggressive communicators tend to criticize, blame, and try to control others around them, and they interrupt frequently. Assertive communicators are able to express feelings and needs respectfully and clearly while still being able to listen without interrupting others. They tend to feel connected with others and themselves. These people understand their own needs as well as have empathy for the needs of others around them. They address issues as they arise, minimizing feelings of resentfulness and anger because they're dealing with it right away, and they make room for others to do the same. You're modeling this for the people around you. Most of us are raised to be passive in our communication as children, especially as girls. As women, we're constantly expected to be passive in school, at work, with friends, and even with partners. All of this adds up to not learning or having had the opportunity to practice the skills needed to be assertive when it's necessary later in life. For example, you learn how to be passive and cater to others for so long, and then suddenly you have a business and you have to learn how to communicate assertively and be clear, but really you're used to following how other people direct you. So that's always a big challenge when you go from having one way and being told to do things one way and then having to do things another way suddenly. You need to start a step-by-step growth program and grow into this new way of communicating. It's not always going to be easy. It tends to be uncomfortable when it's not something you've done before, but it's definitely doable, and it's a learned skill, to be quite honest. It's not something you have to know ahead of time. To know more about that, we want to know what kind of communicator you really are. Okay? You may have also tried to be assertive at times and been told to be nicer, quieter, not make so much noise, or not make an issue of it. You've probably seen other assertive women shot down or dismissed as dramatic, either called names, either to their face or behind their back for speaking up. And you've definitely seen this in the news and all over social media as women are blamed for their own experiences when they do speak up. All of this reinforces a fear of being assertive and leads to the idea that speaking assertively is uncomfortable, even rude, and it's going to trigger the feeling that someone will react negatively to you or be upset with you. In reality, most conversations are not that high risk and can go very well with some clarity and open discussion. It's easy to get a sense with just a few questions what your communication style really is. If you're unable to say no, can't be direct, and don't feel comfortable asking questions in general, you're most likely a passive communicator. And that's a lot of who I'm talking to. When thinking about your own communication style, these are a few questions to ask yourself. Are your sentences filled with gaps such as ums, maybes? Do you feel able to say no to things? Are you able to ask questions, or do you shy away from them? Can you disagree with what's being said when you have an alternative opinion or different beliefs? Are you able to defend yourself when you're being blamed for something that wasn't your fault? All those are questions you can ask yourself and determine, are you more passive? Are you more aggressive? Are you right in the middle? To really change your learned behavior of communicating passively, aggressively, or otherwise, you have to break those associations from the past and learn new ways of communicating with your peers, colleagues, and family. This also means you're going to have to learn to be uncomfortable sometimes when asserting yourself. That's okay and completely normal. I always talk to people about growth being uncomfortable because it's breaking your normal way of being. Just like when you push yourself with exercise, you go that next step, you go that extra mile. It's uncomfortable, but it serves a larger purpose. If you've been speaking passively for most of your life, anything even a little bit assertive is going to feel aggressive. But that doesn't mean it is. It just means it's outside your comfort zone. I want you to keep coming back to this as a reference when you think about your own communication. Anything even a little bit assertive is going to feel aggressive if you've been passive your whole life. We'll also have mental barriers to speaking up for ourselves that stop us from moving forward. In fact, most of us focus on what could go wrong if we speak up to the point that we miss out on what we can gain from communicating more assertively and clearly. I also want you to think of communicating assertively as communicating effectively. So that next step to really start the process of changing how you communicate is to identify what you can gain by improving your communication and expressing yourself clearly, calmly, and assertively. This is where the real mindset shift happens. By realizing passive communication is actually preventing you from achieving your goals and moving forward, you can start to dismantle this pattern. It's important to ask yourself if your current behavior and way of interacting is helping you, or is it holding you back? Is it making you feel good about yourself? Are you often thinking about what you wish you would have said instead of what you did say? How do you feel when you do speak up, and how do you feel when you don't speak up? A lot of us are stuck in outdated ideas around assertiveness and confrontation, taught that confrontation is rude, try to make people happy. A lot of us are raised to be people pleasers, but in reality, a reasonable amount of confrontation is healthy in a balanced life and actually necessary to keep it balanced. But you're here, so I think you're already taking that first step, which is curiosity and accountability. As part of this mindset shift, I usually recommend identifying or making a list of how clear communication can help you in your business. First, what are your goals around clearer communication? And what's the best case scenario if your conversation goes well? In my work with people, we often identify a specific conversation that they're avoiding and try to break it down into what could go right and what they want to communicate clearly. Say 3 things that you want to get across to another person. So some examples of what you can gain if that conversation goes well: clear expectations for you and your team, better working relationships, smoother operations, and less anxiety and stress overall, since no one has to mind read or guess what is expected of them. You may not even be thinking of it this way because you're so worried about your own confrontation or upsetting others, but when your employees, your staff, your team is confused, everyone's more anxious and less productive. So while the conversation itself may feel uncomfortable, the change in dynamics will embed you much more securely in your leadership role, establishing clear expectations for both you and your team. If you're a team leader, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're the CEO or anything, even in any leadership role, you're a model for those that you're supervising and supporting. So modeling how to communicate will make them more able to communicate with you. Effective and clear communication reduces job-related stress, improves work-life balance, will improve your work relationships, and many other aspects of your professional and personal lives. It's also more than likely you're more comfortable being assertive and authentic and clear with some people and not with others. So I also really like to take advantage of where you do have this strength and focus on what you gain from being yourself and how you feel, and then how to translate that to your work life. I also really recommend to start small when it comes to assertive communication goals. Do not go after your biggest fear first. Don't go after the biggest conversation you're worried about having. It sets you up for failure and reinforces the idea that it won't go well, making you more likely to avoid clear communication. Instead, think of a small thing that you'd like to address with someone you're already comfortable with, if that's an option for you. For example, if you avoid all confrontations, you can start with asking for a schedule change. That's not a confrontation, that's a work request. You can you can let someone know that you're going to take a day off. A lot of us as solopreneurs tend to overwork ourselves and never take time off. That could be a starting point. Implementing daily habits is also a great way to start improving communication in small, achievable ways. It also creates new automatic responses that can replace your older, more passive interactive patterns. Some daily habits to practice are saying no more often, especially if you have the need to please those around you. This can be hard, but the only way to really improve your communication is to practice letting go of what other people want. You can use the word because to explain your decision to say no. That can help you and the other person understand and respect your decisions. You can practice active listening, which is summarizing what someone says back to you to make sure that you hear them and gives you time to process it more fully. This helps the other person feel understood. It helps eliminate confusion in what's being said. It makes sure you understand them, and again, gives you time to make sure you understand what's being asked of you, and gives you time to think about it and process it. If you have to say no, if you have a alternative suggestion, all those types of things can be processed while you're making sure you understand the other person clearly. Practice taking time to respond. If you don't know what to say, it's always a good idea to take some time to think about your response. You can always use the phrase, "I need to think about that and get back to you." It's always okay to not have an answer right away. For example, and again, a low risk way of doing this is we might have that person who over emails every thought they have so that it's your inbox is just flooded with their non-urgent questions. A way to start practicing taking time to respond is that wait a few hours and respond to everything all at once. It's low risk and low confrontation. And if it's not an emergency, it can probably wait. Oftentimes when we're responding right away, it might be because we're trying to mitigate someone else's anxiety, because anxiety is a bit contagious. So people might think it's really urgent, but it's not necessarily urgent. They just can't contain any amount of questions. So in your case, as the leader, you have to model that by waiting and thinking and doing it the most effective and respectful way. It's important to remember too, everyone's baseline comfort levels are different. So it's important to find yours and increase your level of challenge strategically. Just like you wouldn't just go and run a marathon, you'd start running around the block and then adding a little more time, and a little more days, things like that, especially if you've never run before. This is similar. If you're new to communicating assertively, practice is your new best friend. You can run through what you want to say with a friend or even by yourself, but think it through and practice what you want to say. Create bullet points for yourself of the points you want to get across. And then think, if it sounds or feels passive to you, it probably is. Another trick is to write out what you want to say, exactly how you'd say it, which might even mean using a voice recorder, and see what words you can remove to make your message clearer and simpler. Especially any qualifiers like do you think, or maybe, or would you. Those are all qualifiers that water down your message. The more comfortable you get and the more often you practice, you can begin expanding your comfort levels by taking more progressive steps as you go. So with these couple of steps, I think you can start to really transform your communication. If you have other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I want to thank you for attending my Transform Your Communication Style Live. Please feel free to drop any questions below. I'll be checking them throughout the week, or you can send me a direct message on Facebook. I'm happy to chat. I'm also offering a free guide to transform your leadership style. Leave a comment if you want to get the guide, and I'll be sure to send it your way. And in the next week or two, I'll be releasing the details about my upcoming workshop, Elevate Your Leadership Communication, which starts in early November. Drop a comment below if you want the information, or if you enjoyed this talk. I'll also share the link to book a no-strings-attached consultation call to jumpstart your communication transformation. Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to learning from all of you as well.